So today I'm talking about sabotaging happiness, sabotaging peace, and sabotaging calm. And usually when I'm talking about those things, I'm usually talking about when the narcissist sabotages that, right? Because we know that narcissists hate to see you happy. The reason they hate to see you happy is because it's a real emotion in you. Like when you're feeling happy, it's because you're feeling happy. In their case, when they are feeling happy, what they're really doing is imitating what happiness looks like, but they don't really feel it. And so when they see that you can feel something that they can't, in their minds, it's like you feel that they can't, so they take that happiness away and it establishes that status quo that they need inside of them. Right now they feel better about themselves because now they've taken your happiness. Now you're sad and upset. You're down here, they're up here. So I'm sure you'll agree with me. If you look back on your life, if you feel like you've had people in your life, whether they were family, friends, significant others, or coworkers that might be on that scale of, and might be high, I should say, on the scale of NPD, then you can look back and realize that anytime you were happy, something negative was said, or some kind of emotional pain was inflicted, or you were simply ignored and emotionally abandoned. Regardless of exactly what they did, it was always something negative anytime you were happy. There was never support. They never encouraged you. They never kind of let you shine, so to speak. As a result of that, while you were in that relationship, or while you were still close to the people that were inflicting this kind of emotional and psychological abuse on you, you probably found yourself toning yourself down, right? Or not even allowing yourself to get to that place of happiness because your brain began to associate happiness with danger. It made a paired association. And so to keep you safe from the emotional pain that was always inflicted anytime you were happy, your brain starts kind of taking you down a different road, a different neural pathway in your mind that avoids and detours in another direction so that you don't feel happy. So that's what happens because of the other person. But I wanted to talk today and make this video about you and how sometimes, even after you're out of the relationship with a narcissist, how you can wind up sabotaging your own happiness. I want to talk about why that happens. I'm going to talk about different relationships that you can see this in, because you can see it in a romantic relationship. You can see it in your relationship with self. If you have children or other family members that are still in contact with some individuals that may still be on that high on that scale of NPD, you may see it in them. Or you might be in a relationship now and you might be sabotaging the happiness of that relationship. And on the flip side, you might be someone dating someone that has unhealed Cptsd. So I'm going to talk about it from all these different angles, because if we can look at it, understand it, and learn how to work through it, then that's how you stop sabotaging that happiness, okay? So let's first talk about it from a relationship with self, okay? I think one of the hardest things to understand after narcissistic abuse is what happens after the relationship is over, or what happens after you detox your life from all toxic people. If you used to love to be happy and you were a super happy person, which I hear a lot in my coaching practice, right? They'll tell me, Michele, I have two personalities, the person I am today and the person I was prior to the relationship. And that's hard. That's hard to realize that now that the person is out of your life, what you start to see is that you still sabotage your own happiness. You still tone yourself down. You don't allow yourself to feel happy. And the reason is, I'm hoping that we'll normalize it first, and then we'll give you some tools if you find that you're doing this to yourself, okay? The reason is that happiness became synonymous with emotional pain in your brain. And because, if nothing else, narcissists are repetitive. They would repeat the same behaviors over and over and cause you to feel the same pain over and over. And the subconscious mind learns through repetition plus emotion. So it learned that happiness was synonymous with pain. So the toxic person isn't trying to take your happiness away, but now your subconscious mind has stepped in because it thinks it's keeping you safe. If you thought that leaving the relationship was suddenly going to cause you to spring back into the person you were prior, then that's the hard part, is realizing that that doesn't happen. Okay? But once you realize that that doesn't happen, you can start looking at what you can do to get that person back. And one of the things you have to do is start retraining, reconditioning your subconscious. You have to teach it that happiness is safe, that happiness is positive. And you can do that in so many different ways. And this can feel a little bit awkward at first because it's almost like you're hitting a brick wall in your mind. And in a way you are. Because the narcissist or the narcissistic abuse had you traveling down or had you detoured in another route with your neural pathways. Well, what happened was the pathways to happiness, they haven't been traveled in so long that your brain just, it's like you got to retrain it to travel down there. Okay? And then you have to do what the narcissist did, except in a healthy way. You have to repeat. You have to give it, your subconscious mind, the repetition plus emotion so that happiness feels safe again to you. And then you have to be patient because our subconscious mind is not programmed and changed overnight. It doesn't change in just one day. It can take weeks for the subconscious mind to change, and that's if you're being consistent. So if you're starting new behaviors and new thought patterns towards happiness and then you're stopping and starting and stopping, well, it's almost like it's going to be even longer because you're not consistently doing it every day. So my point is, be patient. Be patient with yourself as you're rewiring, because healing involves rewiring the mind. So let's go to another relationship. Let's say you have a child, whether it's an adult child, a younger child, that has been on the pattern because somebody else in the family has taught them that happiness is dangerous. So how that shows up is, let's say you're taking your kids somewhere to have a good time. Remember, when the narcissist was in everyone's life, every good time or every fun event was either preceded or proceeded by something horrible happening, okay? Well, guess what? Your kids learned that pattern. And what you'll find is that, let's say if they're really young children, you're going to take them somewhere and you're like, what is going on? Why are they so out of control? Why are they fighting so much? Why are they acting like this? And then they'll get to the place and it'll be like nothing ever happened, because that's the pattern that they've been on. So you have to starve the drama, okay? The tendency, especially if you're still healing, is that's going to trigger you because it's going to remind you of all the times you were going someplace fun and the way to that fun event was a nightmare. It's going to wake it up. The problem with that is you're going to respond from your triggered state. And when you're triggered, you're either going to be super angry, irritable, you're not going to be grounded. You're going to be coming at your children from your wounded self. And when you do that, you actually keep those behaviors alive because that's what they're used to. So in their minds, they're not trying to be disrespectful. They're not trying to cause a problem. Their brain is just on a pattern. This has been their life. So they're repeating the pattern. And so you have to really starve it. I knew one mom, when she realized that her kids were in this pattern, anytime they were going someplace fun, and she realized that by getting upset, nothing would change, right? They'd get upset, then they'd go, but then it'd be the same pattern the next time. Well, what she did was she started pulling over on the side of the road. She wouldn't say anything, and the kids would be going at it, and then suddenly they'd realize, you know, they're stopped, they're on the way to a movie, they're going to miss the movie. And once they calmed down, she would say, you know, now we're going to stay for 5 minutes because there's no fighting. There's that kind of behavior isn't acceptable. And she'd put them in a timeout after they were calm, not while they were still fighting. Well, they hated that. They started to realize that the fighting was actually causing them more pain than the calmness. And little by little, they started to be more comfortable with being calm. So the key is if your children, especially small children, if they're in that cycle, you have to understand that it's not just them trying to be disobedient. They have been through trauma. They have been through psychological abuse, manipulation, and I'm not saying to excuse the behavior, but what I am saying is come at it from a grounded place and not a triggered place, which means you really have to work through your triggers in order to be able to help them. Okay, so let's talk about a romantic relationship. If you still have not healed your triggers, your wounds, then they can come up in the relationship with your significant other, and you might find yourself causing problems and fights that don't make sense. Like, why am I getting so mad? He was so peaceful, he was so calm. And you wind up being the one that's sabotaging the happiness. A lot of times that happens because, again, remember, if you had your happiness sabotaged every time you were feeling happy, sometimes a person will sabotage their happiness now, even though that toxic person isn't around, because they're expecting it to be sabotaged, and at least there's a measure of control as to when and how it's being sabotaged. Now, not that anyone's thinking that way on a conscious level, but sometimes that's what happens. You're so afraid that you're going to lose that happiness that you wind up, it's like a self-fulfilled prophecy that you wind up creating. I think a lot of people will wind up telling their significant other, you know, I'm triggered, this is happening, and they're hoping that that person can help them. Now, if the significant other helps, that's wonderful. That's a beautiful thing. However, the way that you really heal is by healing your triggers, not by avoiding them, not by trying to have the other person not trigger you. The real power comes in working through those triggers so that you can feel grounded in yourself. What that entails is you have to start really peeling back the layers. Like, why does peace cause you to feel triggered? What is the story or the meaning that you give it when you're in that situation that you feel triggered? Okay, because it's usually not the action that's taking place in the moment, but it's the meaning that that behavior has as to something that happened to you in the past. So, for example, the meaning could be that, you know, there's peace, there's calm. That means I'm not safe because at any moment, you know, the shoe's going to drop. Sometimes the meaning, and I've heard this a lot with some clients, is that they only know a relationship with a narcissist. So when the narcissist isn't around, they wind up acting like the narcissist. It's almost like if one person isn't, then they will become it. Not because they want to, as much as because they don't know how to be in a relationship that's healthy. So part of being able to not sabotage peace and calm is to start being present when that peace and calm is around you, and you start feeling those sensations in your body that kind of wake up things in your body, wake up thoughts that don't make sense, and start practicing observing. Use the observe, don't absorb on yourself, which means if anger or fear come up, instead of allowing that to be who you are, you can just notice it objectively, like, oh, there's this anger coming up. I wonder why. Like, why is it there? And have some curiosity. Once you understand why it's there, validate it, because it's probably an emotion that got stuck because you never were able to process and work through it. So it's an opportunity for you to be able to do that. And the more you work through what comes up, instead of just reacting and sabotaging the happiness, the more you work through it on an internal level, the more present you're going to be and the more grounded you're going to be. And for anyone that's in a relationship with somebody that's like that, I just want to say, less is more. In other words, observe the person. If you're being peaceful and they suddenly attack you, and you can tell when somebody's triggered, especially if they aren't a narcissist, but they're somebody that has unhealed Cptsd. They'll usually be somebody that can be really calm, really sweet, and suddenly you're like, what happened? It's not that they changed personalities as much as they are suddenly in a triggered state. Okay? If this person has the habit of doing that, when everything's great, when everything's peaceful and everything's loving, and then they turn into this person you don't recognize, resist the urge to defend yourself when they attack, because they will. They will say something to try to make it your fault instead of owning that it's a trigger. Just recognize that that will happen while they're triggered. Resist the urge to over-explain. They're not really listening because they're really operating from a place from the past, okay? On top of that, they're going to spin everything. You can say one sentence that just allows you to acknowledge, with respect and stay grounded in you without agreeing to what's going on. You can say something like, I see that you're upset. I'm sorry you're feeling upset and angry. I'm sorry you're feeling triggered. I can hear that you're feeling upset. Whatever it is, you want to kind of just hold a mirror up to them in a respectful way and stay grounded in you. Because the second you give any kind of emotional response of defending or of getting upset and angry and engage in an argument, that's keeping alive that cycle of drama that they adopted from the narcissist. So you kind of have to starve the drama as well and recognize they're triggered, but you're here for them when they're ready, but that you're not going to engage while they're in a triggered state. When you engage, they see you. They see you upset, they see you angry, they see you getting emotionally dysregulated, and they don't see themselves. But when you stay grounded in yourself, whether you realize it or not, they start to see themselves. So I know it's a little complicated, but I hope these tips help. And again, if you're working through this on your own and it's challenging and you would like to be able to have interactive conversations on these topics, make sure you check out the Thriver School of Transformation. We meet live every week, and this month we are going over trauma-induced codependency. So make sure you check it out in the description box below.